In this interview series, we speak with great musicians and educators on the art and craft of practice and preparation. And today, we're super lucky to sit down and learn from Dave Levita. He's a sought-after session player, seasoned touring guitarist, and an insightful musical mind whose credits range from Alanis Morissette and Tim McGraw to Eminem and Rod Stewart, and really so many others. Dave shares his insights on developing your musical taste, learning how to craft parts that fit into a track, and the essential practice habits that go beyond chops, things like playing with great drummers, understanding your gear inside out, and knowing how to build a palette of sounds that serve the song on the spot. So let's get into it. All right, we're here with David Levita today. Thanks for coming on and speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
For a young musician, up-and-coming musician, who wants to get into being called for sessions. Let's say hypothetically they had a year to sit down and practice. How should they spend their practice time in order to be an effective session musician and somebody that can get called on for those kind of gigs?
I would say first thing is, what is the style of music that you want to play and love to listen to on records, and that you can imagine yourself doing? And if that's obvious, hopefully it's obvious, you have in your heart the kind of music that you listen to that you want to play on those type of records. I would say one really valuable thing is to listen to those records. And if you're a guitar player, specifically, really try and listen for the guitar parts. There's usually more than one, but not always. And listen to what is the role of the guitar on this recording that you're listening to? Because your job can be different at different times on recording sessions, but it's almost always to be part of the rhythm section. And people don't usually think of guitar in those terms. They usually think about it as a solo or a melody, which it can be, but you're really part of the drum bass thing to me. And if you listen to the records you love, listen to where the guitar sits with the drums, what it's doing against the bass. Sometimes guitars will double bass lines, or vice versa. Bass players, it's usually the other way around. Usually, if somebody's doubling somebody, you're doubling the bass, not the other way around. How the rhythm is sitting, how does it feel? And if there's records that you really love, that you admire how the guitar is functioning in the track, try and learn the part and play along. And, practicing with a metronome, obviously, for lots of things is great. But records some of them are cut with click tracks. These days, everything seems like it's cut with a click. But then there's a feel against the tempo of the track. And really try and get inside that feel and to where it becomes very natural to play a guitar part for the length of a song and figure out how it shifts. And, for me, I listened to a lot of records. I never really learned lots of songs. I never wanted to be in a cover band, so I never bothered to learn tons of songs, but I did learn lots of guitar bits along the way to figure out, what is the guitar, how is the guitar player making this happen? And, my first and really only guitar teacher, a great New York City guitar legend named Tomas Donker, when I first started to show me things on guitar, told me that the guitar is a rhythm instrument, and that is your role. Everything else is like icing on the cake. Because we were listening. I'm not a classical musician, really. I love classical music, and I play it for myself, for the love of it. And and I'm not a jazz musician, so if I was a jazz musician, my practice regimen would be very different, I think. But I'm like, I play R&B and popular music, and so the things you need to excel at, it's playing in time, grooving, making it feel really good. That comes first. Absolutely, feel. If it doesn't feel good, people won't know why they don't like it, but they won't like it. And so, I listened to all sorts of records and different guitar players, but I would say it really depends on the kind of music you love. So what I listened to was because of that's my taste. That's what I thought was cool. And, eventually, so you said if you had a year. Mm. So in that year, I would maybe dissect and really try and cop the feel of guitar players whose records that you were like, I wish I had played on that record. That could be a really useful thing, and play along to it incessantly until it feels like to you as good as the record feels, or as good as you're going to get, because you're never going to feel like anybody else. Everybody has their own very distinct sound and feel. So you will never sound like the record, and that's not really the goal in studying guitar parts like that. It's not to become a mimic of somebody. Like Nile Rodgers is a very good example, of a great rhythm guitar player. Mm-hmm. If you go listen, and oftentimes we think we know what the guitar part on a record was. And then if we go and we like dig a little deeper and we listen to it, we go like, oh, I'm not playing that really even that close to what I thought it was. Yeah. And usually it's a lot less than we thought it was, because I find that the really great recording guitar players always find the most economical way to get to the thing. Usually, not always, but a lot, it's like less. And we always have a tendency when we start out to want to fill up every space, because it's scary out there in space, Yeah. The other thing about if you have a year to get it together for, recording sessions, it's obviously is your sound. You have to be somewhat of a chameleon as a session guitar player. Mm-hmm. You can't, you have to be flexible. People will, typically on sessions, people will list an artist or a record that they're trying to reference and get close to. I've heard, we want this to sound like U2 so many times. I've heard, we want this to sound like, John Frusciante from, help me out
Chili
here.
Peppers.
Chili Peppers. I've heard, we want this to sound like Radiohead. I can't tell you the number of times those three references have come up, but just because they say that doesn't mean that they want you to be overly derivative. It's still important, I think, for you to have your own sound and try and because believability factor is high in a recording session. You don't want it to sound fake or phony. You really want it to be believable. It has to have some emotional, guttural thing, and that only comes from your own experience in life and your own upbringing and your own hands and how your hands connect to your body and your playing. So sound is a large part, I think, this is me I think a large part of sound comes from your hands, directly how hard you tend to hit, how sensitive you can be with your left and right hands, where you place your right hand up the neck or down the neck. There's so many different sounds you can get. Your left hand can be a mute, or it can keep things very open sounding. You can be very sloppy with it, which can sound really good, or you can try and be very pristine, which can be cool. Sound comes from hands, but sound then also comes from your actual tools, your guitar, your amp. I, personally I fell in love with guitar pedals many years ago, especially once I started traveling a lot as a touring musician, especially going overseas and going into music shops that had like a collection of pedals and stuff where and I had a little time and I was making a little dough, and I started things like fuzz pedals. I noticed they all sound so different, but I started to, and listening, I think, a lot to guitar players like Andy Summers. I really love The Police. I started to really explore the guitar, the sound of the guitar, in an ambient fashion, in a textural context where I wasn't competing with the keyboard player, but I wasn't really trying to get the purest, most fattest guitar sound. In fact, a lot of times I'm cutting away the guitar and making it really small, because a lot of times on records, especially pop records, you have to find a space in the track to be useful and be heard. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that is not the fattest, best guitar sound. So I started experimenting with filtering out the guitar, turning the tone on my guitar down, but losing a lot of the low end, really carving the guitar up. So I would say as a practice, getting back to your question, what does that mean as it's actually practicing to, take the equipment that you have and mess with it. And because you don't want to go into the studio and take up anybody's sweet time messing around for sound. You want to have a lot of choices at your fingertips ready. You can get a little bit of you can do a little bit of experimentation depending on the situation, but oftentimes you don't have much time. Mm-hmm. So you have to be mentally, if you hear something, think about, what you have available to you down on the floor at your ready of ways you can profoundly, be a part of the track that are, different strategies. It's not scientific, but it is thoughtful. And that all, you have to do that as homework before you ever enter the studio. You have to know, what you're doing as far as your sound, what you like. If the track obviously is calling for some like crazy high gain, vicious distortion, don't be going like, you do not want to spend 10 minutes can be an eternity in the studio. 5 minutes can be an eternity in the studio. Literally, you want to be able to get to your sound in about a minute or sometimes you have the luxury, they'll change the microphone on your amplifier, or you're recording at home. If you're recording at home, none of this matters. The time factor doesn't matter. You can take your time. But if you're with other musicians, which, sometimes you are, and a producer and an engineer, know how to get to your sound quickly. Have some tricks up your sleeve. They might say, we'd love something beautiful in the intro. For instance, you might get asked. There's a lot of ways to do that. It could be a beautiful melody with a very reverbed out sound, or it could be something that you can't even hear the melody. It could be very ambient. But to do that, you need a method. There's different ways of doing that. There's different pedals that can help you achieve that. You can do it with volume pedals. But it really comes from here and here. Like, it's a combination of being very reactive and having planned ahead. So, yeah, a lot of times people will say, I'm going to send you the track before. And I'm always like, well, I won't be listening to it.
Oh,
I tell
really?
them quite honestly, unless it's really complicated and I need time to make the chart, in which case, okay, fine, I'll do it. But I find reacting to the song is the best way to get that believability factor and that excitement level cranked up. Because if you come into the studio with a preconceived notion of what you're going to do and you're like, damn, this is going to wait till they hear this. Mm-hmm. And then they go, that's not really what we were thinking. And then you're like, what? And you're like, you're flummoxed. You're like,
it's demoralizing.
Yeah, it is demoralizing. And, part of your gig as a sideman in the studio is to be flexible. We don't really like that. Can you try something else? And one of the very difficult lessons for us to learn is letting go of our ego and our, but man, my approach is so much better than what they're suggesting. Mm-hmm. I have said that to myself when I was first starting out. Mm-hmm. I say it to myself still sometimes, but it never creeps up very far above here. It never really gets to here. It used to be like, sometimes I would blurt out to producers like, really? And that's a really bad place to be and very dangerous and will get you fired real fast. So, or not asked back. So again, going back to the question, which was if I had a year to prepare, get your arsenal together of sounds and equipment and know, like, it's like a toolbox. Work on your toolbox.
In a way, it's making me think of the way that a jazz player builds up their toolbox of vocabulary for when it comes time to improvise. This is the equivalent, but in terms of having a sonic palette to work with sort of in the moment. You kind of want to get to the studio, be inspired and react and be able to dial up that sound in 10 seconds, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I need a vocabulary of chord voicings and, melodic shapes that I can go to as well. They're just not nearly as extensive as a jazz musician, because if you start adding too much complexity to the kind of music that I tend to work on, you'll get booted, However, if you're really clever, you can sneak in cool stuff that they don't even know why they like it. You can sneak in chromaticisms. And the really cherished session musicians are often great jazz players too, and have extended the vocabulary of what is allowed on popular records, because they're so gifted and so clever. And so, the artist and the producer also have to be open to that. But yes, it is a parallel reality. But I also need chord shapes. I can't just know how to play D major there. I need to know how to get, I need a cool way to play it up here, put the 9 on top or whatever, or suspend it easily, and not always suspend it to the 3rd, but sometimes undo it to the 5th. You need your tricks. You want to have your secret little, things that you think, like, maybe not everybody's playing minor chords this way, like everybody knows A minor like this, but maybe, have your cool shape that, like, not a lot of people are using, where you sneak the 11 in there. And, if you can, pop music is often about, and I think jazz too, though, a couple of notes in your voicings that are important. You don't have to play all 6 strings. You don't have to play even 5 strings. You don't even have to play 4. 2 can be enough a lot of times, or 3. So, we need our vocabulary too. So going back to the question, yes, that is another thing to practice, is to go through your chord voicings and find some really good, great, useful shapes that you can go to quickly. so that when you're looking at a chord chart, you're not stuck in the same down here position, and depending on what else is going on in the music, you might need to be down here in the basement of the guitar because of what everybody else is doing. But you might need to be up here, and you don't want to be thinking too hard about how to get up there. You want to be able to look. For me, it's, a combo of ear and shape, but it's really about shape, and I memorize shapes. I'm not that gifted a musician. That's why I never became a jazz musician, because I don't have the greatest ear in the world, and, modulating and changing, I can't really sing that stuff. I can't sing chromaticisms. I can't delineate. I can recognize it, but to be a great jazz musician, I think you have to be able to kind of sing it to yourself and hear it as it goes by. You can train that, but some people are just naturally gifted at that. Me, not so much. So I'm a huge fan of this kind of music, but it's not something that I practice. But I do practice, or I have in the past practiced finding shapes of chords up and down the neck, and then you can go around and do it for every chord. Lots of guitar players use capos so that those shapes don't change. Mm-hmm. I don't like to use capos very much. I want to be able to play in A flat if somebody asks me to, or E flat, and if that, in E flat, that open G is going to be useful, then it's actually cool to be in E flat. It's not so bad. People freak out when they see it, but it's actually pretty good. So, start to think about the odd keys a little bit too, because a lot of times, especially songs that are written on piano, will be in keys that are not great for guitar. And so part of your practice needs to be, familiarizing yourself with the keys that are not the cowboy chords, Right. And sorry, I played G minor. That's not a cowboy chord, but you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Was self-assessment a big part of your practicing in terms of your feel and things like that? Like maybe recording yourself, listening back, analyzing what you were doing? Or is it just more of a innate kind of feeling that you're like, I'm locked in, I'm grooving?
For me, part of it was playing with drummers and good drummers, not in the recording studio, but, just playing.
Okay. Would you get together and just jam with a drummer for a while?
Drummer, a good drummer. Yeah. A bad drummer can lead you down a bad path. But I was lucky. I kind of got to be around some good drummers. Especially if you're a music student and you go to music school, for instance, a lot of those people are pretty gifted. That's why they're there. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is, the music that you like to play, actually play it live with drummers and bass players when you can, because it's a lot different standing up or even sitting down, it doesn't matter, but playing in the moment with people. Mm-hmm. And, it's louder. There's the sheer volume and physicality of it is different than just sitting in your bedroom with a recording. It's much more physical, and, it's fun, and dig in and really listen. And, there can be things like trying to play behind the downbeat, trying to, I think guitar players, everybody says this, and I think it's kind of generally true. Guitar players tend to push the music. They tend to play faster than the drummer is playing a little bit. In a lot of times, I've seen it, I've heard it. Maybe work on that. Really trying to get sassier with your playing, because what it means is that you're more relaxed. And you're less using your head, and you're more using your body and your chest. And, when I play, I have to use everything, my guts, I have to use my body. I can't play unmoving. I just can't do it. Not everybody is like that. But, so I would say as far as getting groove together, it's a combo of, because records, the groove tends to be impeccable. It's like, it's forever. So they're going to make it sound and feel as good as possible. And the drummers that get to play on records are usually really good. So, but doing it live is what it ends up being when you're in the studio. They're just recording it, but you're playing it live. You're actually playing it. So, getting with drummers that you like and actually, don't be scared of playing a groove for 5 minutes straight. That is really good practice. It could be something simple. It could be a 4-bar phrase. It could be, verse, chorus over and over again of a song.
For what
whatever.
I read about you, I know that for a period of time you were playing calypso kind of music.
Yeah.
And to me, playing that kind of music, which tends to have maybe just a chord or a few chords, for a period of time, that repetition can really kind of take your groove to another level.
100%. I mean, I was very lucky. When I was at Berkeley, I hooked up with some cats from Barbados, and they eventually, when they split, they invited me to go there and play in like a calypso and reggae and top 40 cover band on the island. And I was like, yeah, it was like really my first real gig, actually. Calypso, like you said, it's usually 3 or 4 chords. It could be 1 chord sometimes. And, but the groove is everything because you are there. Your function is to get people to dance. Yeah. And any music that is coming from that part of the world is grooving, man. It's grooving hard. Mm-hmm. And it's very, it's relentless and joyful. And you kind of have to hop on for dear life. And then you start to, so you really have to loosen up. Your right hand has to get really loose. Your left hand has to get really loose, but not sloppy. Mm-hmm. But it forces you to relax your body. You can't play certain kinds of music. Even reggae, people think, oh, that's easy. It's just, it's just upstrokes. But good luck doing that for a half an hour, right, and making it feel good to everybody. And, you're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to mishit your instrument. That's okay.
But to be able to establish that consistency, to keep that groove and make it feel good for a period of time.
Yeah, and there's a joy in that. Like for me anyway, mm-hmm. Some people would go crazy doing that, but not me. I get like hypnotized by the music. Mm-hmm. And I love, especially when I was like playing on the island, like watching the dancers and like feeling, it was part of this whole experience. It really wasn't so much about me. It was like, I get lost. And that is a really cool thing to have happen when you're playing music, is to actually forget that you're playing music. Yeah. It doesn't happen that often. And that's not, that doesn't really relate so much to the studio thing, although that can happen in rare moments in the studio. Okay. If you're lucky, you can be like, do something and you have no idea what you were doing and you weren't thinking about it. And it's like, but that's pretty rare. Usually it's more focus and like really just, yes, you have to be relaxed, but yes, playing calypso and reggae and R&B music in general is, finding that groove and, go listen to the great ones because they will show you the way on these records. Like, I mentioned Nile Rodgers, but there's so many great rhythm guitar players that are unsung heroes that we don't know the names of necessarily unless we look at liner notes, which are hard to find. But yeah, doing that for a year straight was really good especially for my right hand and for my way of thinking about playing, that you can be repetitive. You can be, it's because in the repetition, there are so many subtleties that are actually really sophisticated that people will turn their nose up at and never notice. But like, like like great African guitar players, like people think they don't have a clue how difficult and beautiful that style of guitar playing is. But it is, because it's only 2 or 3 chords. But it is, to me, it's beyond sophistication. It is advanced because it is, connecting us to something that is felt. So, and is so swanky and like, I don't know. It just is what it is. It just feels so good.
I think often it can be deceptively simple, or people can take it for granted, but it just is the fact that it might not be as harmonically complex, but the focus is all about capturing the spirit and the character and the feel.
Yeah, go try and learn some, King Sunny Ade guitar parts, and you will get your ass busted. You will be like, and try and play them and make them sound as good as that guitar player. Right. You'll be like, oh my God, this is like killing me right now. Now, I haven't done a ton of that. I've done a little bit of that, because there's a lot in that style of music, traditional kind of like, there's a lot of amazing guitar playing, and you can learn a lot from those cats, and that can inform your playing because a lot of that is done with fingers and is really arpeggiative, if that's even a word, in its approach. And I got a lot of that from Andy Summers. I think actually he was one of my favorite guitar players who, used arpeggiation in popular song guitar playing. And totally. I really love that because, you can do a lot with just a few notes and you can be part of the rhythm section. Arpeggiation is like this beautiful way of creating a motor within the track and helping, carry the song along rhythmically. The direct physical act of practicing arpeggiation of chords on guitar is super important for me. Going both directions, up and down, changing your pattern and doing that in a way that it feels and sounds good with a metronome or with a record. If it's your own pattern, then, sometimes your mind, you just don't want to play to a metronome because it can be very cold and it can make you not want to play guitar sometimes, hearing a click going by. So sometimes I don't do it because it can be annoying, but sometimes it's really useful.
Do you ever practice to, let's say, drum grooves, loops?
I don't really have a library of those. I should have, really. No, when I do that, it's usually to a record. Mm-hmm. I should practice to a drum groove, but I have never really done that. I've done it mostly to metronome. I try to find a soft metronome sound that I like, so it's not so abrasive. But no, I would think that's a great idea, though, to use drum loops and drum grooves. But for sure, the whole act of like, there's different, you can use a pick and arpeggiate, and you can use fingers. So, get that together to where you can play in time. Slow tempos are very important. I'm sure other people you've had on here have talked about that. Mm-hmm. But slowing down your practice I'm guilty of not doing that plenty, but every time I do, I'm like, why don't I do this more? Because slowing down the things that you want to play and being able to play them well slowly will enable you to then practice them fast. And there is something about the physical, your physical ability playing slow and doing that smoothly. I think it's more difficult than anything else, actually, to make something groove at a slow tempo. So work on those, it could be a rhythm thing. It could be an arpeggio, change the pattern, and then I oftentimes will work on speeding up and slowing down gradually, because that is really good practice for your technique, like decelerating and accelerating.
Okay.
And at the same time, doing that with dynamics, meaning the volume and the attack that you apply to the instrument. Those things are really crucial, because in a recording session, they're going to be like, that sounds kind of harsh. Can you make it just smoother? And that is dynamics. That is getting good at playing the same guitar part with a different level of attack or intensity. So practice playing your rhythm stuff really staccato, meaning, you guys know what that means, or sometimes very legato, very smoothly, but the same part. Because sometimes you get requests like, I love that piece, but can you connect those notes more smoothly, or can you shorten them? And if you haven't practiced that stuff, it might catch you off guard in the studio, where you're like, I can't really do that well. And then they're looking at you like, oh, I guess you're not as flexible as I thought you might be. They're thinking that, they're not saying that to you. So you need to practice sometimes the same thing played quite differently. I think is something that nobody ever really told me that. It kind of, over time, it occurred to me to do that.
That's a great tip right there.
The difference between different ways of attack, very strident or very smooth, but the same thing, being able to understand how you can, because that determines the sound of your guitar ultimately, other than the pedals you're using and the amp you're using and the guitar you're using and where you turn the tone. I think over time, I've started backing my tone off more and more over the years. I don't want to hear high end, because I can get a lot of it out of my pick.
Okay.
And they can always add it in. But anyway, that's just
one of the other things that you mentioned was this idea of kind of orchestration, knowing what parts to play and not playing too much, not cluttering up the track, sort of knowing, because you were talking about even sonically sort of filtering your sound down sometimes to make it smaller so it could fit in. How does somebody go about developing that sensibility? Because I imagine, I'm not sure if it was the case for you, but for a lot of us, I think we start off with too much clutter, too much busyness, and then it's a process of, over time, gradually learning to simplify and reduce. And to you, is it just a matter of listening to a lot of music and analyzing it?
I think some of it is experience. I definitely had some failures early on in studios, because I didn't actually know what my role was. But take your successes, your early successes in the studio, and hold on to those, and remember, what was it that I did that made this work? Same thing with the failures. But no, I would say it's a matter of experience. The more confidence you have, confidence is kind of huge. It's kind of everything, in fact. If you don't have any confidence in any musical situation, it could be the studio or a concert, playing a concert, you need to have confidence. And to do that, that comes from your preparation beforehand. It comes from some experience. For me, some of it was people that I really admired telling me that it was okay to fail and to screw up and to be imperfect, and to, reminding me you are imperfect and that is beautiful and that's okay. Embrace that. Part of it is that.
Okay.
Because if you're always struggling to be perfect when you're playing, you're probably going to be very stiff, and it's going to be really not very enjoyable. But if you're able to let go of, for me anyway, let the flaws be just what they are, and then just keep going, and lose the right side brain and really get into the where you're in the moment. That is really important
in terms of developing that sensibility of finding your place in the mix, let's say
Oh,
orchestration-wise,
right.
somebody asks you to create a guitar part, and that it fits in nicely like a puzzle.
Well, I started out wanting to be in bands, and so I was in bands for a while. And part of your thing as a guitar player in a band is to come up with a cool part for the song. So it wasn't like I was suddenly in a foreign territory when I got into the recording studio. It's like, oh, this is kind of like being in a band, except I'm not going to ever get sick of the singer because I may never see them again. So part of it is, I would say what's really important for the guitar player is listen to the singer. And sometimes you can double the singer or play at the same time, but a lot of times, get the hell out of the way of the singer and play something that is somehow lifts the singer and complements them. That doesn't mean filling every space in between the vocal, but there lies much of your opportunity. I would say in general, this is not a hard, fast rule, but as a guitar player, a lot of your free play area is in those gaps where the vocalist is not singing. And those can be tricky, they could be just a breath, because some songs are very busy. And this doesn't have anything to do with the intro of a song. Then sometimes it's like, oh, you got to find a hook. You got to find a cool thing to set this song up. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the meat of the song. Your money place sometimes can be where that vocalist is not. So that's one place to look with your ear for where you can get. And then obviously the other thing is thinking about like I said before, you are a motor. So, a lot of times I will use common tones in the chord changes of the chart to be the motor, where I can change as few notes as possible so that nobody notices me because they don't hear me changing. And sometimes playing more constantly can actually be more invisible than a lot of starting and stopping. It's quite interesting phenomenon.
Wow.
Like rolling through the song can sometimes really make you achieve really cool texture in the track. So there's no rule. There's no hard and fast rule about this. This really is song to song. Yeah, think about common tones between chords and, finding shapes where you don't have to move very much to change, to honor the harmony as it changes through the song. Sometimes I try and find a part where it's 3 notes that repeat over all the chords, even if it's wrong a little bit, even if I disobeyed, as long as I'm not playing atonally. Generally you don't want too much atonality, although sometimes it can be a hook, but very rarely. So generally, but if it's, sometimes I will, disobey a chord to leave one note unchanged. In other words, when I get to the major chord, I won't play the third because I haven't been playing it on the other 2 chord shapes, and that major chord stays suspended or something. Sometimes you get busted for that, and they'll be like, can you resolve that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like for these kind of parts, you're thinking of them more as textures that can play throughout the tune, and by using careful voice leading, or maybe not even really changing the notes very much between the chords, you're able to keep a sustained guitar part going without it intruding on the vocalist. It sort of becomes part of the color or the emotion of the song.
Yeah. Andy Summers, Police records.
Yeah.
I learned so much from those records. He's like the king of arpeggiation and the king of pedal tone. He's so good at that. So I didn't really study those records. I just loved them, So I would learn some of those things, and I think that crept into my playing a lot.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because
it's so useful. To me, it's such a simplistic, easy way to get inside a song quickly. Is common tones, simple arpeggiation. What is wrong with that? You can't always do that, but it works a lot. And just by changing your guitar sound and coming up with your own unique sound, you can keep a similar approach, but by changing the sound a lot. Sometimes your job as the guitar player is meat and potatoes, you just have to be that, and that's fun. But there's lots of people that can do that. It's what gets you, I think, some work outside of that is the ability to come up with parts in addition to that part. Because that part, you're going to, there's the bread and butter parts, and you have to recognize those quickly and get those out of the way and cut those with the drummer. And it's then when you go like, but I have another idea. Can I try something? That will get you loved by the producer and hired again. And it could be a simple thing. A lot of those parts for me, like, are transitions, a transition from one section into another, like a sound that gets you to the next section. I've gotten really into that over the years, like coming up with sounds and things that can be transitional, because those page turners are really exciting in a song when you hear them. You may not notice them or remember them, but the producer is very grateful to you for that, because it can't always be a drum fill. It can't always be a chord change. Sometimes there's no chord change. Sometimes it's the same chords, it's just the melody changes. But there's still a transition there. Yeah. And sometimes you don't want any transition. You just want it to... But sometimes there needs to be a transition. And traditionally, I think keyboard players and synth players have done a lot of that. But because pedals have gotten so good and sophisticated, there's a lot of area for us guitar players to take advantage of these toys and make use of them. And I love doing that. So,
Yeah, man. I mean, that's 100% what I hear in the recordings that I've listened to that you've done, is the way that you use things like pedals or certain guitar parts to enhance the vibe and the emotion of the song. Like you say, it doesn't always need to be the most complex part, maybe necessarily harmonically or technically, but you're finding just the right part to tell the story of the song. I mean, I hear that pretty clearly.
I worked on the new Black Keys album.
Okay. And
Dan Auerbach, the lead singer, is a great guitar player. And, when they would send me the song, I did that remotely. There was, a main guitar riff. I knew right away, like, avoid guitarisms as much as possible, unless it's so kick-ass that it has to be there. Otherwise, find just excitements, exclamation points to the song that, are going to be like hooky and cool and fun, but are not going to steal the thunder of the raw guitar riff. They've got a song out called Man on a Mission. And some of the stuff I'm doing on there, I wouldn't recognize it as guitar. I know it's me because I did it, but if I heard the recording, I wouldn't know necessarily.
They become colors, right? And the song,
they become colors, and
characters.
they become bursts. Characters. It's a balance between doing something unexpected and cool that they're going to go like, fuck yeah, that was great, and trying to understand what it is they want, they meaning the producer and the artist want. That is the motivation. Like, you're trying to please the artist and the producer, and you're trying to please yourself. It's a combo factor. Like, sometimes you just have to do what you don't want to do because that's what they want, and that's fine too. Do it really well, Do you ever find yourself sort of getting stuck in coming up with a certain part or something that... All the time. I try not to get married to something if I'm like, this is not great. I try and quickly move off of it and change tactics. I will change pedals, change guitars.
Okay.
think like I will go to a different part of the actual guitar neck. You know, I will try and shift and not get married to what this has got to work.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I will take a half an hour. I will start with something that's really close, but not the right thing, but it's close. And I'm so thick that sometimes, like, it takes me a half an hour. I can only do this when I'm at home alone working on a part for somebody. I can't really do this in the studio. Right. But I will take that much time to fine tune the sound and the part. If I know it's like, I know I'm in the right territory, but it can be better, until finally you just feel like, okay, that's cool enough. And then do it and move on. So, you know, but sometimes you go, this is not working. What I will do oftentimes, this applies only to recording home alone. I will play back from the beginning of the song over and over and feel how something feels in the flow of the track. Like, it might feel great when you're playing it and recording it, but then when you hear it in the context of, as the song is going by, having heard it from the beginning of the song, you're like, that is wrong. How did I get that so wrong? Because it's a context. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes I will spend a little extra time. It's the pre-roll. How much pre-roll do you give yourself listening back to a guitar part? Do you go a minute back in the song and listen from that far back? Sometimes when you're working on a part, I only want one bar of pre-roll. Oftentimes when I'm punching in with producers and engineers, I'm like, just one bar, man, come on. I don't want to sit here for 2 minutes until my part comes that I screwed up. I want to correct it quickly. Can you just give me one bar? Unless the tempo is really fast, give me 2 bars. But pre-roll is very important. How far back you start the listening before you start recording again can change your perspective, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it gives you a context maybe for the weight of your part, the busyness or the simplicity, and how it's working in the flow of the song.
But as far as the motivation, you know, and getting stuck, it can happen. And I would say, just change your guitar. Change some pedals up. Take a breath. Mute all your guitars that you've done and listen to the song again fresh. And again, listen to the singer. And if there's something else cool on the track that's there, vibe with that. If there's nothing else very cool, then you might be in trouble because you might be the only cool thing on the track.
I listened to that project that you did with Jeff Babco and Victor Indrizzo. Yeah, that's an example to me, you know, how you come up with parts that are just perfect for the character and the vibe of the song. I mean, some of those songs, they sound so animated to me. And the way that you fit the guitar in there, almost like could be a synthesizer sometimes, you know, and
for sure,
which I think is a very Andy Summers influence, you know.
You know, I have the benefit of having a lot more toys at my disposal than he had back in the 80s. They didn't have that much stuff. They had some good things, but there's so much out there right now. But yeah, and Jeff and I are always, if there's a new pedal that comes out, he sends it to me. So I have invested quite a bit of time and money in pedals, and sometimes I don't like them and I don't jive with them, and then I just sell them. And if I lose a little money, I don't care. It's not about money for me. It's about research and development of my sonic palette. But Jeff is incredible. And so, and the thing about those recordings is we wanted to keep them very short so that we didn't get bored and nobody else got bored. And nobody told anybody else what to play. So it was really about like, and there's a lot of comedy and a lot of humor inherently because Jeff is very funny. And, you know, but also those two guys are so good. I did not want to send anything that was expected or I was trying to like, you know, I was trying to blow their minds a little bit. Yeah. So part of it is that, you know, I was like, I wanted to get a reaction. I didn't want like, oh, that's cool, great. No, I want everybody to laugh when they heard what I said.
Yeah.
So,
I love that stuff. That stuff is so cool. And
thank you. Me too. It was really fun and really good for the soul during COVID. Like, it's one of those things where we couldn't be in the room together, and and being able to record sometimes. This is also a good thing for all musicians. Sometimes record stuff just for the love of doing it, even if it's not commercial sounding, but it's great practice at working on your playing, your sound. Do it with friends, do it alone, whatever. I steal things off of Instagram all the time, drummers' posts, and write little things to them, and because it's fun, and because it's like, I just enjoy it, and like, hopefully I haven't insulted anybody, because, I'm pretty, I just put it up there. I don't ask the permission. I'm reposting
they're probably flattered.
What's that?
They're probably flattered.
I don't know about that, but it's good practice though. It's like, you're being a session player. You're coming up with something for a song, and the song was just a drum loop.
Yeah.
And like, you're having to invent something, because part of being a session musician is compositional. We never get the credit. In fact, some albums I've worked on, I've come up with the chords and the riff, and I still don't get songwriting credit. It's happened multiple times, but anyway, it's all good. I'm happy to, whatever. We'll figure that out some other day. And if I really wanted to pursue a career as a songwriter, I could probably have put myself in a lot more of those situations, but that was not my. Once I left being in a band and became just a sideman, I dug that, and so I stuck to my guns as far as that goes. And we only have so much time in the day, and so if I'm doing things that I'm not being remunerated for, I want it to be for me and not for like the possibility of something in the future. I don't have that mindset. Some people will spend months songwriting for the hope of getting one thing put out there. That's not for me, However, stealing things off of Instagram, like drum posts and bass posts and whatever it might be, that don't have anything else on there, that's good practice. Even if you don't repost it, even if it's just for you, there's so much cool stuff out there. Like you said, practicing to drum loops. I don't practice drum loops, but I've stolen a lot of drum stuff in the past couple of years and come up with guitar stuff for it. And
you see, now you're inspiring me to do that. Now that sounds like a really cool idea.
It is. There's, and some of these drummers that I follow, their posts are like 15 seconds long, and it's like, damn, how do I come up with something cool that's only 15 seconds long? That's a challenge. Sometimes I'll figure out a way of fake looping them. It's hard with video in Pro Tools. Pro Tools doesn't really let you duplicate the picture, but I have cheating ways around that too. I figured out ways around that to make it like at least 30 seconds, to give myself a chance to like
do something.
Do something. Yeah. But sometimes the challenge is like 15 seconds is a good challenge.
It's a little bit like writing a little television ad, like a 15-second edit.
Totally. But like, think about like the verse of a song might be only 15 seconds long, and you have to come up with something that's interesting for 15 seconds. So it's not like it doesn't relate to what what you want to do as a recording musician,
What I'd like to ask you about is preparing for a gig where you're given a whole bunch of music. I know some of the gigs that I've been on where you'll just be given 10, 20, 30 tunes to learn. Have you found any kind of process for breaking that stuff down?
Yeah, it's one of my least favorite tasks, but it's necessary. For me, I usually make a chart, forces me to learn the song by making a chart, and then as quickly as I can, I will try and get off the chart so that I'm not reliant on it. Unless it's a one-off gig and I'm allowed to use a chart.
Generally, somebody will just send you an MP3. They won't actually send you the notation or a chart.
Pretty rare. They don't send me their notation. I mean, more often than not, they will not send me the notation. And if they do, I'll play along with the song looking at the chord chart, but I try as quickly as possible to get it off the chart because, like I said, unless it's just one gig and they have no problem with you keeping the chart on stage, because then, what's the point of memorizing something that you're going to only just never play again? Yeah. But I don't do a lot of gigs like that, very few. So, for me, like for instance, I've been playing in Tim McGraw's band for quite a while now, and every year we will do a new set list, and sometimes there will be new songs to learn. So there might be different versions of the song. There might be live versions and there might be album versions. And, part of it is knowing what your role is. Do I have to learn this exact guitar part, or am I free to just be, do something that's appropriate for the song? So there's figuring that aspect of it out. But for me, it's like anything that I want to memorize, even when I was a student at school doing not non-music stuff. I was a pretty good student, but if I wrote it out once, I had a much better shot of doing well on the test. If I tried to just memorize it with never writing it down, there's something about the act of doing this that leaves an indelible mark in my brain. So I find that writing something can help, give that nugget of memory, and then you can move off of it.
And when you have a whole set of these songs, once you do your chart and start getting stuff in your head, will you practice one song at a time until you get each one really tight, or is it a process of keep going over all, let's say 30 songs?
Some songs are much easier than others. So once I've got those out of the way, I start to focus more on the difficult ones. And if I can, I try and get a set list ahead of time and practice things in the order so that I can, think about run the order of songs. But like I said, I don't do a lot of gigs other than the touring for the past 26 years. Now, I did sub for a year on Rod Stewart's gig for one of the guitar players, and then I had to learn an entire set of music, and I had to do it quickly. So now that is not complicated music, but it is very specific. And if you don't play it the way he wants it, you'll be out in 3 seconds. You won't even make it through the door. So I never really auditioned. I got recommended, but my first rehearsal was not really a rehearsal. It was really an audition. And, so for me, that kind of music was really making it feel good. And that was the job. Play the hell out of that rhythm guitar and make it feel sexy, like it does on his records. If I hadn't been able to do that, it wouldn't have mattered how much I memorized the song. He would have, because when I got to the rehearsal place where we did the rehearsal, after about a minute and a half of each song, he'd stop and he'd say, "Okay, next." And I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm in big trouble." He's not even finishing the songs. But it was the opposite. Okay. It was like, okay, he's got this. And after about 4 songs, he stopped me and he's like, "Okay, we're good." And he split. And then it was up to me to make sure I had everything under my belt when we left for Europe, whatever, a week later. Okay. And the band helped. They were very helpful. The bass player, Conrad, was he was like, "You need to make sure do this way because he really loves it." Blah blah blah. So they didn't. I had allies, but my point is there it was yes, memorizing the song was important, but it's also making it feel good. Knowing what the feel is and capturing that is as important as learning the actual song itself. Picking the right sound. Now that gig, it is very rock and roll. So that meant having a very good, just pure, basic, beautiful rock and roll guitar sound. A lot of that has to do with your gear, frankly. It's in your hands, but have some stuff that you can lean on that's going to sound good when you plug it in every time. I had an old AC30 and an old 335, and I was good. My guitar sound was good when I showed up. It was like, okay, and a good strat, like whatever, A jazz gig is, yes, your sound is very good, but so much more of that is, you're not going to be blazing loud. You can play through a polytone and like any semi-hollow, not any, but a good semi-hollow body guitar. And if you're a great jazz musician, people are going to love what you do. Pop gigs, it's more sound is important. So I did have to learn songs once for one Shakira show. Because I played with her in the studio a few times, and she asked me to go on tour. And I couldn't do the tour, but I was available for this one gig, and they needed somebody. So that was a case of like putting together a pedal board quickly that I knew I could get the songs, play them with a sound that would be close enough for the one show, and then I had to just suck it up and learn a bunch of these songs, and I wrote them out, and then I memorized the set list, and I only had a couple of rehearsals, and I would say over preparation is always good. Don't under prepare. Be like, I know this song like the back of my hand, because you're still going to forget things. You're still going to panic. There's still going to come moments when the lights come on and the sound system's going and people are there. You're going to be like, what the fuck was that song again? Sorry, my language. What the hell was I supposed to play? So be over prepared.
Right.
You're only going to have to do this once in your life, even if it's a little painful.
So you have to be able to counter the distractions that are going to come up inevitably.
Yes, 100%. Not everybody needs to do that. Some musicians are so gifted. I know them. I've met them. I've worked with them. They're so gifted. They listen once. They've got like photographic musical memory. I am not one of these people. Not even close. So know who you are and prepare accordingly. That's all.
Now, generally, once you get on the road, let's say with Tim McGraw, do you find yourself practicing during the day apart from the gig, or is it just too much and
I play guitar all day in my hotel room.
Okay.
I'm doing this. I'm learning like.
And you're doing a lot of
practicing
classical stuff, right? And
yeah, just for me. Because on the McGraw gig, like I will bring an electric guitar if I'm on the road sometimes into my hotel room. But I travel with my own gut string. I don't have to bring any guitars with me. So I always travel with a gut string and I just play music for myself. And then once I'm out on the road, I might grab an electric guitar from the rack. And before a show, I like to warm up for an hour or two. I will do a lot of half tone, whole tone. I find is my favorite finger warm up. And then I'll play some licks and stuff. And I like to have warm hands before I play. I like to be playing. The other cats, most of them don't do that at all. They don't seem to need to. They play great without it. I need it.
Maybe they're just doing it in private where you can't.
I just don't think they need to. They just no, they're not doing it. I'm just weird like that, and I don't have great technique, so I need all the homework and help I can get. If I don't play guitar for a week, I lose a lot. Some people could not pick it up for a year, and they're still like incredible. It really is different for every person. So for me, I need to have hands on guitar a lot, and fortunately, I enjoy it. But electric guitar, I don't do a lot of shredding, which is why I'm not very virtuosic on electric. But I don't really need to be for the kind of music I'm playing. And for what I do, and I'd rather spend my time that I have my free time playing music where the guitar is playing the whole song, as opposed to lead guitar stuff. I'll leave that to the shredders of the world because they're incredible. I will never be a shredder.
How do you find material that you that you want to practice on acoustic? I've heard you on some videos playing some, I think, like Eric Satie pieces, maybe some Brazilian-y kind of things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I love classical guitar and I love Brazilian guitar, but a lot of it is too difficult for me because it's really. So when it comes to learning things, I try and I started by trying to learn how to do tremolo, which is like, 3 fingers on a string. I was on the road. I had a gig in France with a French artist years ago. And I was finding myself, I wanted to take a break from partying. I stopped drinking for a while. And I found myself with time on my hands. And the first piece that I wanted to learn how to play was a very famous piece called Recuerdos a la Alhambra by Terrega, who's like the godfather of classical guitar. So that's where I really started, was on the road when I had time on my hands, in my hotel room trying to learn tremolo. And from there, and then I just go on YouTube and, there's so much beautiful music out there. And if I think I have a shot at learning it, I'll print out the sheet music and I'll do a combination of ear and sheet music to learn things. I'm not a great reader, but I'm good enough to eventually get through it. I'm not a sight reader, but I'm good enough to eventually, especially if I can hear it, use my ear and the page to learn a piece. And, if it's super fast, I'm probably not even going to attempt it because unfortunately, no matter how much I seem to practice, I'm never going to be a fast guitar player. It's just not in my bloodstream, I can have bursts, but I can't sustain. Like some cats are just, you, for instance, yeah.
No way.
I can't do that, but it's okay. It's all right. Know what you're good at, and I try and work on those things, but yeah. So YouTube, I go to YouTube or Apple Music, and but I the algorithm these days, the algorithm has a way of sending you, once you listen to one thing, they'll send you somewhere else.
Sure.
But and guitar players or musicians friend of mine will hit me to things, but more often than not, it's just, you start in a place and then you follow a trail. There's like breadcrumbs. I follow a lot of young classical and Brazilian guitar players online on Instagram, and that leads me to a lot of great music. And I'm just blown away by the amount of incredible guitar players. It's just mind-blowing.
So many.
It's like
it's so infuriating.
It is infuriating, but
it's inspiring and infuriating.
It is both. But once you accept that that's the way it is, and you just, it's all good. So my favorite classical guitar players right now, my favorite one is a woman, an young Italian woman who's just and she's in her mid-20s, and the reason why she's my favorite is because of the sound. She's, for me, the most expressive, so expressive, which is really, at the end of the day, the older I get, and I'm pretty old, the thing that I crave more and more when I listen to music is expression, beauty. So when I listen to music for myself, or playing music for myself, I'm craving beauty a lot, and the world is very dark and hard out there. So music is it's like a refuge.
I hear that.
So I seek these very beautiful, and guitar is perfect for that because, piano's expressive, cello's expressive, but guitar, especially nylon string guitar, is incredibly expressive.
Tell me, what's the process of practicing with the band in terms of preparing for an upcoming tour? Is there a typical sort of
these guys, the Nashville cats are so good. They're so professional, and they take their job so seriously that I know ahead of time, make sure I pretty much know everything before I get there, because they're not going to make a lot of mistakes. We give ourselves a little bit of leniency, but not too much. So when we go in there, after a few run-throughs, we're kind of already sounding really good. Then it gets to be like that over-preparation. It's about being a little over-prepared so that when we go hit the stage, but it typically is, first day is a lot about getting your mix together so that you have a great blend in your ears of everybody so that you can hear the music the way you want to hear it and be able to play well.
Is this always with in-ear monitors?
These days, for many years, it's been in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. And now, because of digital technology, they capture those mixes and remember them. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to spend a lot of time when we get together. A lot of the time is spent working on intros and segues between songs. And I get asked, like other people in the band, to come up with ideas. And sometimes that involves pre-recording some stuff, but not always. The musical director will say, can you give me a segue between these two songs? Or I will think about the set list and I'll say, hey, I have a great idea for an intro for this song. Because Tim loves slightly different, he likes to hear the songs played in a familiar way, but he loves different takes when it comes to intros or outros or musical events that happen in the song. Because when you play a song the same over and over the course of years, you want to excite the audience, you want to excite yourself. So part of the process of the rehearsals is getting the set together where all these segues and intros flow together really well. Okay. That's the thing that takes and some years we have like sets that are just, they flow so good, and some weren't as successful, but usually they're pretty good.
I was curious with somebody like Alanis, for example. I know that there's a lot of movement on the stage. Is that ever part of your actual rehearsal, or is that just sort of winged on stage? Like when I see her bass player he's all over the stage.
Cedric.
Yeah, so
I miss playing with Cedric. I used to get down with him a lot. He and I used to get down a lot, and he's incredible.
Yeah.
No, there's no preparation. Just there's awareness. Mm-hmm. Do not ever upstage the singer. That's number one. Okay. Rule number one.
All right.
Never.
But
forget an upstage.
Does she, for example, encourage the band to be like,
yes,
I want everybody moving. I want,
Yeah, I don't know if she ever had to say that when I was in the band, because we were just so excited, and, everybody has their own personality. So the keyboard player can't move, really, and the drummer can't move. So it's really left to the two guitarists and the bass player. Mm-hmm. And we all had our own thing going on, but we were all very sensitive humans and loved her. So we just, it's about crossing the stage, because if you're on a wireless rig, you don't have to stay rooted in the same spot. Mm-hmm. It's about, vibing it over the course of gigs, knowing where the moments are, and you come up with these things that seem to recur same time during the same song. Mm-hmm. These things can happen year after year. They're always spontaneous, but they always happen in the same moment because they just work. Yeah. It's weird. And, and McGraw, his music is like kick-ass rock and roll. Mm-hmm. So the moment I started playing with him, I just wanted to be active, and he's so active, and he never said anything to me don't do, as long as I didn't get in his way, be aware, never get in their way, and don't upstage them. But when it's your moment, when it's appropriate, they like it if you are helping them give energy to the audience, because then the show is fun for everybody. Yeah. So pick your spots where it's okay, it's okay for me to interact with the crowd and be not just in the shadows, but sometimes just be in the shadows. And it really depends on the gig. I've been lucky. Both those two gigs were very physical gigs. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Rod Stewart gig was you really had to know where you were supposed to be on stage at all times. Okay. And there were times where you were required to be out front and be as bold as possible, but otherwise know your role really, song to song, spot to spot. And that just takes a little time. You don't really rehearse it. You figure it out on the fly on the gig.
Right. So it's a combination of sort of intuition and just your excitement anyway for
be yourself.
Energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Be yourself. A lot of it has to do with the drummer's energy for me and the singer. It's between the singer's energy and the drummer's energy. Yeah. They drive you. And then the crowd is like, at gigs, like, I don't know, if a crowd is going nuts, like, I can't really stand still unless it's like a beautiful, chill moment. Mm-hmm. And, it's also about what the music requires. Some parts of songs require you to stand still so you can focus and make sure you play. Mm-hmm. But I am guilty of having lots of fumbles because I'm probably a little too energetic. But, it's a give and take. You kind of try and find that sweet spot. But
yeah, you definitely bring a lot of energy to the stage and stage presence.
I try.
And that's a special thing in itself to be able to do that.
I try. I do it because it's fun, man. And it's rock and roll. Like, man, I've seen so many concerts, like, people doing incredible stuff on stage. And you look at, like, somebody like Angus is still, I mean, he's friggin' 80 years old or something. And he's still like, I mean, he may not be as, incredible as when he was young, but he's not standing in place. I think the moment he can't move, he'll probably stop doing what he loves to do or something. So,
Between Alanis and Tim, is there anything that has remained with you in terms of their work ethic and the way that they lead a band? I mean, I'm sure maybe in both these situations there was a separate musical director anyway, but...
in Alanis' band, I was the musical director.
You were? Oh, okay.
But that really wasn't about me telling people what to play or how to play. That was me helping her come up with the set list night to night.
Okay.
Because she liked to change the set list. McGraw does not. McGraw has a musical director. And I think in Alanis' band, we all contributed, but I was, I took it upon myself to be particularly responsible for intros and segues, but everybody contributed. But, I was just the final presenter or something. I was, it was a very communist situation. It was a socialist situation. But I was the one that would help her make the set list from night to night.
That's cool.
And I think
sounds like a fun job.
It was. I loved it.
Yeah.
And McGraw, he brings so much energy to the stage. It's like, it makes your job easy. Like, he's got a thing. He's so charismatic, and and his crowds love him too. Both those artists are so beloved by their audiences that when you get on stage, and both bands were great. I played, both these bands I played in were fantastic. There's never been a weak point in any of the bands in either of those gigs. Every musician in every chair was like amazing. So my job was always be like, just plays, try not to suck.
Man, that what a fantastic, opportunity to.
I got lucky. The Alanis gig really changed my life. I really was, in LA for a couple of years, struggling and, getting the gig with her legitimized me in the eyes of a lot of people here in town. And then they started hiring me for recordings. Crazy how that happened. And it gave me a lot of confidence because she instilled me with so much confidence. She gave me so much love and taught me to love myself a lot. She was amazing for that.
Wow.
She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and she was able to verbalize it, but more than that, just make it happen for me. And
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of her music and her whole energy and her vibe,
Me too.
I think she's great.
Me too. And I got to play on, I still get to play on records of hers sometimes. So that's pretty cool that I've managed to keep somewhat of a relationship with her because I'm in awe of her and I just, and I love her to death. So it's pretty cool. But
that's awesome, man. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having
me here. And now we just got to get 1 million views.
Okay.
Which we'll work on.
Greg, I just got to say, you're like an incredible guitar player. I'm a big fan of yours, and I wish you would post more of your playing, 'cause it's always so great.
Oh,
And
thanks,
like,
man. Well, that's
yeah, man.
really encouraging coming from
Yeah,
you.
do more, man, please. I know you're busy, but like whatever it might be, I'm always like,
Okay, well now I'm gonna have to take some drummer clips and spice them up and get creative.
it's fun. It's fun. It's really fun. Well, thank you for having me, man.
All right, man. Thank you so much.